naturally occurring psychoactive compound, psilocybin, is found in over 200 species of mushrooms. Despite their millennia of use by humans for mental and spiritual well-being, they have been classified falsely among the most dangerous and illegal of substances, locked away from those who need them most. The Psilocybin Chronicles documents the individuals who courageously consume, collect, or cultivate these mushrooms to improve the quality of their lives. Won't you join us as we welcome the return of psilocybin? Welcome to the Psilocybin Chronicles. I am your host, Eric Osborne. This podcast is intended for education and harm reduction purposes only. The Psilocybin Chronicles nor Myco Meditations condones any illegal activity. Megan is a graduate of Indiana University, where she majored in communications and culture. After her studies, she started her career as a corporate art consultant, working on contracts with the VA, the United States Air Force, local hospitals, and more. Years later, she transitioned into her current role as the brand manager of a much-loved mid-century modern artist estate and studio, where she does marketing, licensing, product development, and PR. She fills her free time with live music, exploration of places near and far, and sometimes jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. Won't you join me in welcoming Megan to the Psilocybin Chronicles? All right, Megan, welcome to the Psilocybin Chronicles.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. We've got a nice backdrop for our interview here, hey?
Yeah, this is not too bad. Not too bad at all.
Yeah, hopefully our listeners can hear the ocean and the reggae in the background. We are beachside, and I know our wonderful editor, Jimmy Fro of the Jimmy Fro Show podcast, is going to keep it sounding real nice for you all. So, Megan, tell us, if there was one person that you could consume psilocybin with throughout time and history, who would that be and why?
That would be my mother, Carol.
Very good.
I love my mother endlessly, and I feel from her an unconditional love, and it's something I experienced the other day on my first dosing day, a feeling of unending, indescribable love and peace and a few other things. But I would love for my mother to experience that on this earth, because I think it's the closest we'll ever come to heaven. And I just want her to know. I want everybody I love, anybody I care about, to know this feeling now that I've seen that, felt that, tasted it. So, and I would also enjoy kind of finding out some more of the inner workings of my mother's head. And I only get one side of her usually, and that's a mother. And as an adult, I've gotten the friend side, but I'd love to know her, who she is as a woman, as a human. And I think this has the potential to show me some of that from her. Yeah, we definitely get insights into others through their experience, right? What do you think her level of openness to psilocybin would be at this point? I think more open than the average bear, and I only say that from witnessing her support of my journey here to Jamaica, and over the last couple of years as I've explored this world. She's been very supportive and very open to talking about it. She asks a lot of questions. Okay. So I know there's a curiosity there at the very least. And I think if and when I'm ever able to put words to what I've experienced down here, it would be a very compelling case for her.
So you have, that's great to know that you have been open with her about your experiences and that she's been open to receiving them. Yeah.
And that's something I've talked to a couple people here about regarding going back home, and a friend of mine here, a female, talking about her kind of integrating this with her husband, and and everybody's perceptions of other people's reactions. But one thing that I've been thinking about and discussing with my new friends here is how surprised I've been at how receptive my parents have been throughout this, even just my journey with cannabis. And so I think we don't often give people enough credit, and we make assumptions and don't give them the benefit of the doubt for being open or receptive to these things. And so I think that's where we fall short a lot in just our culture right now, is making a lot of assumptions about people's openness and.
Oh wow, just assumptions in general, right?
Yeah.
About what someone is by looking at how they're wearing, or how they're wearing, what they're wearing, how they're wearing, what they're wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, and I really appreciate how you describe your relationships with these medicines as a journey, because it's an ongoing process of learning how to apply them differently at different times and for different purposes. So let's talk about your journey with psilocybin. When did you first encounter even the idea of magic mushrooms?
The first time was in high school. It wasn't a good introduction. It wasn't even really an introduction. It was this might mess you up or something. And I ate some and was on SSRIs at the time, and now knowing what I know, that's why I didn't feel anything. But I tried a couple of drugs in high school, had the same experience on LSD. One time I remember being able to look across a football field and seeing people's faces and like seeing their eyes, and I was very impressed about that. And I could also see through people's makeup, but that was the only effect I had ever had. And then I spent the rest of my adult life up until a couple of years ago really fearing these plant medicines and the other compounds, and really feared a bad trip, feared a hole being eaten in my brain, because that's what we were told that drugs do and things like that. So I never tried them again. And then a couple years ago I'd quit drinking. I had started exploring my soul and my spirit and realized what a good tool cannabis was for all of that, and started using it medicinally as well. So I kind of was dipping my toe back in these waters, and I started listening to Joe Rogan and finding various guests of his and following them and learning more about this journey, and learning more that this was not what I was. They were not what I had been led to believe they were. So a year and a half ago, a friend of mine in an illness group that I'm in posted a link to the Paul Stamets and Joe Rogan interview. And I listened to that 2 or 3 times over, and my mind was blown wide open and kind of started the journey down towards psychedelics. And my curiosity was piqued, and I just found this just compelling. I was like a compulsion to need to know more and to need to move towards this place.
So you've worked with psilocybin a little bit before you came down here.
Yeah, a handful of times, some low dose experiences.
Okay. So
is that what you asked?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Because I'm just trying to get an understanding, or give the audience an understanding of what your trajectory has looked like. You used psilocybin to some degree in high school, got nothing out of it basically because of the medication that you were on. When you went back into psilocybin on these lower doses by yourself, what kind of an experience were you having?
The very first one was on a riverbed with a random guy I'd met on Bumble a couple of months prior. And we had one date and realized there wasn't a romantic connection, but that he had a history with psychedelics and just seemed like a really good spirit, a good soul. And I was like, I could trust this guy, because that was another part of my fear, was experiencing it with somebody, with the wrong person that could turn the trip into something terrible. And I realize now that that is a factor, but probably was a much bigger fear in my head than it should have been. But anyway, this worked out great. This guy was a great shepherd. And we made a tea. It came on pretty fast, and immediately I knew my life would never be the same after having seen some of this. And it was a very aesthetic situation where just a lot of visuals. I was seeing nature in a way that I couldn't even imagine was possible. I still can't put words to it. It's like what they say, this stuff is ineffable. There will never be a description, but it was just overwhelming, the beauty of the nature that I was surrounded with. And that carried with me for that has been embedded into me. And, but it definitely wet my whistle, or whatever the phrasing is for that. And I needed to know more.
Well, so now you've come here, you've done mushrooms in a group setting here, and I'm interested in how you compare and contrast the two between these solo doses or the one-on-one that you've done and coming in and doing it within the group setting.
It is different on so many levels, and this experience, I still I mean, it's going to take me weeks to process all of this, but it has been beyond my wildest dreams what I've already gained from this. And like I said, I haven't even fully processed this in my brain, but there has been something about this group setting that could never be replicated by myself. And I'm sure other guests will talk about this or have already talked about this, but just there just is this through line, it seems like, to all of us, and not just the participants, but the facilitators. It's just really feels like this cohesive, collective journey that we're taking. And we're all, some of us are going on a boat and some of us are in a covered wagon or a rocket ship or whatever, but we're all like kind of going towards the gold rush or whatever, and the people that are dosing, the people that aren't dosing, everybody had their part. And on our second dosing day, I think that was made very clear. There was a lot going on, and looking at it later when we were all kind of breaking it down and debriefing, there was definitely, it felt like a movie, and there was like plot lines and characters that had to fill certain roles. And and by that, I mean, like, people were going through things that they needed to go through in the time that they did, at the moment that they did, and the location that they did. And it's all just been really beautiful to look at it somewhat from a bird's eye view or something after the fact. But even in it, it just feels like magic. And I don't know if we should probably mention the pronoia.
I think anytime we can bring up pronoia is probably good.
Well, why don't you do a little definition?
Well, it was just, why don't we, weave it into your trip there, because that's how it came up, right?
Okay.
Talk about what you were experiencing there at that time, and then how the conversation evolved.
Yeah, so this was our first dosing day, and I didn't know what to expect. In the past, like I said, I've only done teas, so it's a different dose, it's a different mushroom, different place, different set and setting. So I wasn't totally sure what to expect. I had a little bit of nerves going in, but mostly just hope and excitement. And I started my trip in a hammock down about, I don't know how far that is, 20 feet from the ocean, a beautiful sky. And so I was already in a pretty good place, but I slowly started to leave, and not my covered wagon, but my like unicorn. I was like mounting a unicorn, taking off on my journey. I don't know. Some people seem to be in the slow boat to China or something, but I think I'd been talking to Shane. Can I?
We're sometimes ashamed of Shane, but not right now.
Okay.
No, Shane Moss is joining us again for another retreat, which he's been an excellent addition again. That's who Megan is referring to.
Yeah, he's just become a pal of mine. I listened to his podcast. I feel like there was a lot of familiarity there, at least on my end, from knowing him through that. And it started the trip out in just a really cool vibe. We were just joking around. I knew something good was going to happen. I felt it rumbling in me. At one point, I looked down to my hands and my legs, and that's kind of my telltale sign that things are moving. We were joking yesterday about my freckles tessellating themselves, and just some cool stuff going on. And I think, look down at the concrete and start seeing universes on this concrete floor in this thatch hut. And I knew this was going to be a wild ride, and it was. So at one point I got up to go to the bathroom, and I took a walk outside this hut, and it felt like I walked into, and I feel almost, I don't know what the word is, like blasphemous, but at the same time, it doesn't feel blasphemous. This experience I had the other day was, I truly believe, is the closest I'll ever get to heaven on this earth. And I mean, again, it's just indescribable. There's no way to describe this, but the sheer beauty I was not only seeing, but I was feeling. It wasn't just the aesthetic experience I'd had down by this riverbed a couple months or last summer. This was a life-changing, earth-shattering joy. And again, like, joy just doesn't seem like it's doing justice to what I was feeling. I mean, I realized later, like, I had my hand on my stomach and my heart like half the time, and it was because I felt like I was either going to explode or implode with the love and joy and safety. And I felt just cradled by love. And it just seemed like everything was built for me. I walked outside and the grass and each flower and blossom and each fiber of the tree bark, it was made for me. It was put there for me for that moment, so I could feel this and know that this love and joy exists out in the world. And Eric's sitting here nodding. I think he got some glimpses of my snot-covered face, and I'm sobbing uncontrollably at certain points. It was overwhelming, and I don't know. This is something everybody needs to experience at least once. And the thing is that it's possible, it's achievable. This exists. This was real. I felt this. I experienced it, and I can never unsee that or unfeel that. And that, if nothing else, if I left that afternoon and never looked back to this retreat, it would have all been worth it, just for having that veil lifted.
Well, so that the term that you brought up that introduced that story, the pronoia, people often get paranoid on mushrooms or on cannabis or whatever, drugs, or just in life. And you experienced the opposite, where everything was working in your favor. Everything was conspiring to be beauty and love for you. And I think that is every bit as possible as the opposite. We're so quick to believe that things are working against us, and so hard to convince ourselves that things are working out in our favor. But now that you experience that, just like you said, that you've seen that and you know that's there, then it can't be taken away from you.
And it felt like there was this message coming through, or just this overarching theme, that this wasn't just an experience for my pleasure, although that element was there. Like this was made for me just so I could experience this joy and these endorphin dumps and whatever else was going on. But it felt like a message to me and it felt like it was burrowing in me. And again, all this stuff is really hard to explain. And if I were hearing myself talk about this prior to experiencing this, or a couple years ago, it would be really hard for me to understand or believe even. But it truly felt like there was a greater force outside of me saying, like, this is so important. Like, you need to feel this and see this in your body and your brain. And like, it just felt like it was burrowing inside of me, like this message of that this love is attainable. This joy and this peace is not just for the mushrooms. This is something that can be replicated throughout the rest of my life. Yes.
But it often, or always, we have to see it to know that it's accessible. Right? And if it's as hard as it can be to get there in our daily lives, when we're in so much mundanity and there is ugliness, even around us in this Garden of Eden, we could pick out, there's trash on the beach, right? So, like, without knowing, though, that there is the ability to shift that focus, then it's just like, it's that muscle. It's so hard to work that muscle.
I think that's the important part, is knowing that this, or exactly what you just said, that
it's like all of these things, even what Rex experienced, what Pete experienced, what everybody has experienced throughout this week are different elements or different roles or of the human condition, different aspects of the human condition and what it means to be. And so for me, I think one of the greatest things about psychedelics is that it is so blatantly exposes us to the raw human condition, and whether that's beauty, horror, truth, love, whatever, at its like most raw self. So I love it.
That about sums it up.
Well, so you brought up something that's really is important and is relevant, and as a younger woman, young-ish woman.
35 people. You can make your own assessments.
Right. And I'm 40, so you are younger, right? But, you mentioned this first experience that you had going on riverbank with somebody that you didn't really know, and you kind of thought maybe it was shady. And when we talk about the safety around psychedelics, it's not so often the drugs themselves that we're referring to, but the situations that we find ourselves in, or the people that we find ourselves with while under the influence. And so, I don't want to pass up that you talking about that experience without highlighting and as I'm sure I don't need to for listeners, but just the reality that, your Bumble date, your second Bumble date, might not be the best first time trip companion.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a fluke, and it did work out in my favor, but it could have gone horribly, horribly awry. Luckily, I'm a very good reader of people, and I got a good sense about him, but not everybody has that skill set.
And you might find yourself, like if you're not very good at reading people, which I think I tend to be too trusting, right? And then you get into a psychedelic space with somebody who you just kind of blindly trusted, and then you're like, holy fuck, this person is all bad, and we're in a bad situation.
I honestly, if I could, and I don't like doing things all over again or talking about that, because I do believe all of that led me here to this moment. I believe every moment in my life has led me right here talking to this microphone. But if I could design a perfect onboarding experience for somebody in this world, it would be coming to this place where I'm sitting physically right now and having your first mushroom experience, because this is like nothing else I could imagine, and I will never be able to do this justice. This experience, even outside of the mushroom experience, just being here with you guys and being in this setting, it's just, I kind of feel like it was made for me. Like, I feel like all these other people are just actors brought on. Yeah. You guys put out like an APB. Like, can we get some volunteers? Megan's coming down in April.
Don't go Truman Show on us here.
Yeah.
This is reality. We are all friends here.
Well, but then it's my reality. It's the my God, or whoever's out there looking out for me, ordained this experience for me.
Yes.
And all the people that are here are the people that were meant to be here for me and for them, because I feel like it's kind of we've collectively agreed on that this was our group, and this is.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot, especially considering the fact that you, as you informed me, you were actually actively discouraged from coming, which I do want to take time to talk about that, because it's something that's happening, and it will happen within the psychedelic movement as there become more facilities and individuals who offer psychedelic services. Then there will be some who are correctly or rightly accused, and some that are wrongly accused, and sometimes stories get exaggerated and misconstrued, and there's all kinds of things that can happen in there. But choosing going to a facilitator or a facility that is safe is just extremely important for so many reasons that we won't go into all of those here. But I would like to talk if you would, let's talk about that. You being discouraged from coming, without naming any names. I don't think there's any need to.
Yeah. So a lot of my journey has been, over the last couple of years, has been just soaking up all the podcasts, the research that's come out, the clinical trials, books, anecdotal, discussions, because I'm a really curious person. I love research. I love science. I love getting background on stuff. And so I, have done some digging and joined some Facebook groups, joined some message boards. And I guess before I had kind of dipped my toes in the discussion waters, I had kind of put, the elders in, and I'm saying that using that word kind of loosely, but in this sphere, I'd kind of put them on a pedestal and assumed that they were these, that everybody had a group think situation going on. It was a common, cohesive goal towards universal healing.
We're working towards the benefit of people with psychedelics.
Yeah. And just like anything else, you're kind of disillusioned when you find out what's behind the curtain. And I feel like there's differing motives in this community, and some, I might characterize as noble, and some not as much. And I don't really know where people are coming from, but I do know, from now knowing you firsthand, knowing your family, knowing this organization, that the motives here are pure and good, and I feel safe and cared for. And there was some discouragement regarding safety, and I don't even know what else, but it was just kind of sad to me, knowing what I know now, and kind of feeling what I was before the trip, which.
So this happened like a day or two before your arrival, right? That you had some kind of like, there was like a public conversation on Facebook that you were publicly discouraged from coming here.
Yeah. And, it was kind of a statement in an official capacity, warning again, retracting past
from like an organization
in the psychedelic community, who had previously spoke nothing of the highest praises for this retreat, for this experience. And that initially had not even factored into my decision. I had already listened to you on some podcasts. I'd done my research. I felt very confident sending you my money, booking the flights, everything. And then there was that retraction of some support that had been given. And it was really bizarre timing. Yeah. Cause then a day before this came up again, it was presented to me and I was kind of left with what am I supposed to do with that information now feeling? And, I generally go with my gut, and my gut generally is on point, and it was, and yeah. So, it's a little disheartening to, kind of see this weird, I don't know, infighting or something, or like, because especially if it's not born on facts, and it's just really sad. But I hope that other people are able to make their own judgments as well, because you'll be happy you did.
Well, and I mean, this is not, I do want to take this as an opportunity to try and publicly present a better picture of some of what's going on, like this dialogue. And because, people, there are so many millions and millions of people who are brand new to psychedelics and are coming to this medicine for healing, for real desperate. Like, we have people that come here like, this is my last fucking stop, buddy. Yeah. Like, if it ain't here. And so, the seriousness that we view this work and the responsibility within it, cannot be overstated. But so when people come to media sources or online sources or forums or whatever to try to find out how do I get safe access to this medicine, and they come across these conversations of this kind of infighting or squabbling or name calling and finger pointing and whatnot, it is really very discouraging, because then the people are left wondering who to trust.
Yeah.
And like, when you're going to someone with your psyche, with your most vulnerable places, and then add on top of that you get these like insights and vision within that experience, that you can see the people around, the quality of the people around you.
Yeah.
It's super important that we choose really very safe and caring facilitators or medicine people, whatever we want to term it as. I'm sorry. Like, I know that had to be a stress for you, to like 2 days before you're coming down here to get this like public warning about how, you shouldn't feel safe here. And then you're like, well, what the fuck am I going to do when I'm leaving now? And so, I for what I can do, I apologize that you have to deal with that. Our approach in Myco Meditations is that we really, we don't want to be up in the middle of all that. We just want to do our work and take care of people.
Letting that, I mean, I was kind of hoping you guys were going to jump in and refute this stuff, because I had a feeling some of it was nonsense. But I also appreciate the fact that your work just speaks for itself. And I hope people could hear, what's the word? Like a review, not a review, but whatever. Hear my take on it. Hear somebody else's, Brienne's or whoever, straight from the source, versus somebody else that might have a different motive for sharing their
well, again,
thoughts.
This isn't meant to be a marketing tool. This is your personal experience is actually very relevant to the future experiences of others, or whether or not they choose not to have, because this may be the only option for somebody, and they may choose not to do it because of misinformation.
That's how we were talking about before. This could be somebody's last chance, and if somebody else squashes their last chance,
and the irony that's not, if we're in this work to be helping people, and then discouraging people from gaining access to the experience that's not helping people. It's hurting people.
It's just as bad as the movements that they're trying, the legalization or whatever that people are trying to rally against. I mean, it's just as bad as that. You're keeping people from their medicine.
Yeah. Well, you've been an outstanding participant, and I'm looking forward to this afternoon and what you bring to every day, but to the sessions. It is really like you mentioned. Seeing how everybody shows up in their role.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got another. Let's. How are you feeling as we approach this dose this afternoon?
Well, for the listeners, I had 3 grams on the first day, and then I had that rocket ship ride, and that was pretty insane. I mean, the level of intensity of that was incredible. It was overwhelming. I mean, I just kept feeling like that, but overwhelming in the best of ways. It was like, I don't think I can take 1 more ounce of joy right now. And then here we are, here's another ounce or another gallon. And then yesterday I had a little bit bigger trip, or a little bit bigger dose, and or 2 days ago, whenever that was, and had a very different experience. So today I'm upping the ante even a little bit more, and I'm feeling a little, I don't know if apprehensive is the right word, but I'm just trying to fall back into it. Like, I don't know if there's any 80s babies remember the Nestea plunge.
Yes.
In
or youngish.
Yeah, well, the Nestea plunge, that's when I do a helicopter jump, or even I've done this out of a airplane before, but it just is the best feeling in the world when you just fall back into it, back into the abyss. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of this vision or this picture in my brain that I've had about going into this. Is just doing an Nestea plunge back into it.
Have you been applying your skydiving experiences to your mushroom work?
Yeah, some of it. There's been a lot of seeming analogies or kind of crossovers in that. And yeah, we were talking earlier about, we call it in skydiving an airport where you do the skydiving, where the planes take off and the skydivers congregate. It's called a drop zone. And I feel like psychedelics are sort of a drop zone. People can congregate and get blasted off into an experience that touches every fiber of your being. And skydiving turns out not even close to this in terms of intensity and just sheer bliss. I used to think skydiving was the pinnacle of the human experience in terms of that rush and that every cell of your body being affected. Mm-hmm. And it turns out skydiving is like, I don't know, putting on a couple socks.
Wow.
On your feet.
Wow. That's interesting here. Like, boost my confidence a little bit now. I'm scared to death to think about skydiving. I'm looking at you like, what? So what are your hopes for psilocybin legalization, therapy, just socially?
Well, as it were, this is a very hot topic for me. This is something I've never felt so passionate about. I truly, until a couple years ago, until I started getting into this space, I've always been on the political side very against the war on drugs. I think it's the biggest crime against humanity that we've ever been a part of. If you look at it on broad spectrum, how many lives have been affected or eliminated, not to mention how many lives could have been affected, could have been saved. It honestly makes me sick to my stomach when I think about it. And so I already had a basis going into this on the political side of things, and now I have a personal vested interest in this now that I've seen the work that it can do in my own heart and my own life. And I mean, I'm excited going forward to even see how far this propels me. Mm-hmm. But I have, my blood pressure is rising just talking about this, because I truly, I said this on the first day that I think mushrooms could save the world. Mm-hmm. And I never thought I would be saying something like that. And if you had asked 30-year-old me or 15-year-old me, I would not recognize myself saying that. Mm-hmm. But I believe it so I'm hoping we can get it together as a society and just realize what we've done and start taking steps to course correct. And that means decriminalizing immediately psychedelics, getting